Just really quick as we go through to explain the terms that we're using to try to help explain the overall process as well as each of the application cycles. Whenever we refer to the competitive grants process, we're looking at the whole process, which is a call for applications in the fall. And now this is our pilot year of a call for applications in the spring. This is the first time we've done 2 calls during our funding year. Our annual process is always referred to as a dual year, 2022-2023, because we launch in the fall in preparation for the upcoming calendar year. Our fiscal year is the calendar year, so we're currently in our funding year of 2023. We will refer to the fall call for applications as a cycle and the spring call for applications as a cycle, just to have a short term. So that's how we're using those. This is just another way to look at how we're piloting this new 2 call for applications process, which all feeds into a single calendar year, which is our fiscal year. Throughout the presentation, I'll have some Q&As that we've tried to brainstorm, but that doesn't mean that you don't come up with great questions. You always do that we haven't thought of. So that's why I said, please feel free to jump in with questions throughout or general questions at the end. So right off the top, we know this question will come up. Someone will ask if their organization can submit applications for all types of funding in each cycle. No, we are sticking with our guideline of 1 application per organization. And now that we're piloting 2 calls for applications, it will be 1 award for the funding year for 2023. The reason we're saying per organization, per type of one for a type of funding opportunity is that our Janvrin fund has joined in the competitive process with a call for applications, and I'll touch on that later on. And they join the other committees and field of interest funds that we have had in the process in the past, as well as a new one that has joined the group, and the spring will be their first cycle to potentially look at some applications. So we followed up, we think we've tracked most organizations. If an organization received an award during our fall call for applications, they are not eligible to apply in this cycle. And during this presentation and as we go forward, organizations will choose to either submit a general funding application or a Janvrin fund application. And there are very specific criteria for the Janvrin fund. Once again, a reminder, this is a pilot doing a 2 call for applications. So we're continuously assessing how things are going during the cycles. We know there may be a few little hiccups here and there. There always are just in general. And so as those happen, we'll communicate that. And we appreciate everyone being on the information session and considering an application. Some more. So we often get the questions, the program is collaborative. Could both organizations in the collaboration submit an application? And the response is to that, no. One organization becomes the applicant on behalf of the collaborator and submits the single application, which also means the other organization cannot also submit an application for another piece of the funding. That would be dual funding. If an organization has 2 programs in mind, one that is collaborative and one that might be standalone and specific only to that organization, can you apply for both? At this time, no. As we gauge both the needs and the issues as well as the funding that we have available, we are asking that you choose one. Choose whether you would like to go forward with on the collaborative or for one solely for your organization. If you were a partner on an application, but not the applicant during the fall cycle, and your partner received an application, can you apply? Yes, you may, as long as your application is in no way related or in support of the program that received funding through your partner's application in the fall. It must be completely separate and in no way affiliated with that partner program. The other one that question we get quite frequently, and I wanted to address that at the top, is an organization will sometimes call and say, we have an idea, but we haven't really worked out the specifics yet. We don't have a timeline. We're not really sure how we're going to go forward, but we're germinating an idea. Should we go ahead and apply now? We often encourage and strongly encourage that the organization actually wait until there's a better development of both the project or the program, as well as a plan for implementation. Your narrative is stronger, your goals are clearer, as well as the assessment and sustainability piece. And we're hoping, if all goes well with our pilot of 2 calls for applications, it will increase opportunities for organizations to work on the specifics for a program or an idea or how to address an issue, and have an opportunity in an upcoming cycle to apply for that. As a reminder, there are a number of things that we will not consider applications for. This full list will be obviously in the PowerPoint PDF that you receive. It's also on a number of pages concerning grants on our website, but I do want to stress a few of these right off the top. We are not able to make grants to individuals. So an individual person is not able to apply for a grant from the Community Foundation. We're not able to fund those. We also do not consider initiatives that are re-granting opportunities, meaning that an organization is seeking funding to put into a pool that they will then publish a call for applications and run a competitive process of their own to re-grant those funds. I do want to be clear, though, there are several services and programs in our footprint that we're very aware of and we've been pleased to support in the past that are looking to provide support for individuals, but the individual or the groups do need to submit some type of application or information form to ensure that they meet certain criteria. And I'm thinking, for example, utility supports or fuel oil supports, or access to certain services and supports for individuals that may be in a domestic violence situation or have other financial difficulties or basic needs difficulties. Those are a little different. We're talking about where an organization is actually seeking funding to then turn around and run their own application process for other organizations. We have a very transparent and open approach. We are open to all races, nationalities, ethnicities, genders, disability types, sexual orientation. So we require that all organizations that submit an application to us and receive funding from the Community Foundation also in their constitution, bylaws, and practices have an open, transparent, and inclusive policy in place. We are still continuing to remind individuals that we do not accept applications for hazard pay expenses that have come out of our pandemic situation or other significant issues that may be affecting our community. And recouping lost revenue, whether it's through COVID, you're still trying to recoup losses due to COVID or other losses that you may have incurred, or any expenses incurred prior to July 1st of this calendar year, since that is the main focus of this application cycle. There are others. Please, I encourage you, make sure you check the list if you have any questions about anything that's on the list, but those were the ones I definitely wanted to stress. So some key points to keep in mind. We're seeking applications for the second half of our calendar year, 2023. Awards, again, cannot be used to pay for expenses that were incurred in either calendar year 2022 or prior to July 1st. Our board will review our committee's recommendations in June, and these awards will be distributed in July and August. So these must be expenses going forward. We have 2 calls for applications in this. One, the first one that we're referring to is our general funding. That is our long-standing competitive application process. Those are funding requests of up to $5,000. Our Janvrin Fund joined the process in the fall. Our Janvrin Committee joined the process in the fall. We'll touch on what the mission and the criteria are for that shortly. Those are requests of up to $15,000. As a reminder, this is a competitive process. We have a wide range of organizations and entities that are eligible for applications. We welcome those. It's the best way for us to evaluate what's going on in the communities and how the number of ways we may be able to provide support, resources, assistance, and networking. But it is competitive. And so there is no guarantee of funding, though we do the best that we are able to meet the many needs and issues that are in our 15 towns. There is an ARPA question on the application. We continue to monitor the American Rescue Plan Act funding in our communities, who has been able to access that, what the impact of that has been. I do want to stress that this came up in the fall cycle with regard to this question. This is not funding that came out through COVID during the COVID pandemic. We're talking about the American Rescue Plan Act. We know a number of towns are still running American Rescue Plan Act application processes, so we're just interested. Doesn't affect the potential for funding an application. It's just a way for us to track how our communities are receiving ARPA funding and what the impact of that has been and continues to be. For those that have been through our process in the past, we currently are not reinstating our 3-year on, 1-year off guideline, which meant that an organization that received 3 consecutive competitive awards was required to take a year off. We have continued to table that since 2020 during the pandemic. However, once again, to stress, there is no guarantee of funding for any organization, regardless of its prior funding status with us. Applications will continue to have 2 core questions that are narrative based: a need question, which is what is it that you're doing and how will you provide that service program or your mission, as well as a sustainability assessment question. When we talk about sustainability, we're very interested in what keeps you sustainable in the near term, and that's where we're looking with our funding applications. We're maintaining our open approach to all nonprofits and all of our focus areas, which you'll see in just a moment if you're not familiar with them. We do continue to be very interested in critical needs. We know critical needs are arising every day and how we're all adapting to a post-COVID normal. And we saw a rise in over many years, but particularly in the last few years with regards to education, transportation, particularly for seniors or for medical needs. Mental health, we know, is definitely a big issue in our communities these days, as well as veterans. And the digital divide was something else that arose even more significantly in a COVID, post-COVID norm. So we're looking at that. If you are seeding or piloting a new program, we are always interested in that, but please make sure that you're very clear in your narratives about where you are in the development process and what it will take to launch that program, as well as if it's successful, how to maintain that program. Okay. Let's see. Oops. Okay, so we're now going to look at the 2 types of applications that are available during this cycle. But let's start with the general funding. For most of you who have been through our process, this is going to be very straightforward. You're going to see things that you've seen before. We're always pleased to continue with the support that we are in a broad range of areas and through a number of field of interest fund committees that work with us in this process. Those funding requests are up to $5,000. We have those requests can be supporting general operations for your programs and services to continue your mission. Could be for technology and equipment. We're always interested in organizations that are working on organizational improvement and capacity building for their staff, volunteers, as well as their programs. General program project implementation. Maybe it's a specific program or project that you are implementing or continuing, and you're looking for support of that. Those are always welcome, as well as training and technical assistance. Our areas of impact and focus have not changed. We are a community foundation. We know that our support benefits the community as a whole, and we have really tried to think of all of the different focus or impact areas that can benefit and support our community. And so that we feel that we've compiled a wide range of broad areas that hopefully meet all of the various organizations we've gotten to know and we are getting to know for our new potential applicants. Darcy, I see you have your hand up. Is there a question?
Hi, yes. I am wondering if capacity building also extends to like board development as well.
Yes, it can. Good question. And thank you very much for that. And I want to stress this, Darcy, thanks for asking that question. And this is a good point for me to jump in and say, we know that questions will come up often, either during the session, but afterwards. We'll say this a couple of times throughout because it happens no matter whether you're in a meeting or you're in an information session, you leave and you think, oh, I should have asked that question, or I didn't get a lot of I wasn't really clear on that, or I have a question because we have an idea. Please feel free to either send us an email or pick up the phone. Mary, Cynthia, and I are happy to field those questions and answer the particulars. So if something occurs to you after this, please don't hesitate to reach out. So I want to stick with this just for a little bit. As a reminder, we have wonderful donors over 25 years that have come to the Community Foundation and said, we appreciate your grant making process. We know that funds help to create the pool of money that is available for this process. And we have a large number of funds that have been established over the years to participate in the process. And we are so thankful to those caring donors and partners that do that. We also have various funding partners that have joined us throughout the years, recognizing that we have a process in place. We continuously assess that process to ensure that it's streamlined, transparent, and is benefiting our community as a whole. And one of our most recent funding partners to join that group of pool of funds are our friends at GSB. And as a reminder for those organizations that may have applied directly to GSB for funding prior to 2021, GSB is now partnering with us and is part of our process so that your applications come in these general calls for applications, because GSB's investment in our community is part of our pool of funds that we're using to make grant awards. We also have a number of field of interest funds that have committees that participate in the process. You'll see the list there. We are now up to 10 committees, including our General Grants Committee that participates in this process. We're so pleased to have caring donors that have gotten together, established a field of interest to work with us in our competitive process. The next couple of slides, when you receive your handouts, are just some reminders of what the focus is for some of our field of interest. And once again, I want to give a shout out to our friends at GSB. We're so honored that they joined our process and that we are managing their grant making for the Middlesex County footprint. We also have many long-standing field of interest funds that many of you are probably familiar with. We have the Animals Respect and Friendship Fund, which is very interested in both rescue, adoption, training, as well as health, food, and shelter for animals, but also in programs that utilize animals and their human counterparts, whether it's therapy, it's education, it's outreach. Those are all of great interest to the Animals Respect and Friendship Fund. Our At-Risk Boys Fund is always interested in programs and services that are enhancing life experiences for boys and young men to reach their potential. Cajun Coley's Fund for Conservation and Stewardship is focused on a broad range of conservation, beautification, and environmental education programs for Middletown and the adjacent towns. Our Killingworth Community Fund is a great partner. We're so thrilled to have them, and they're very interested in programs and services that add value and have a positive impact for the Killingworth community. That's their focus. Our newest group to join our newest fund to join the process with a grants committee is the River Valley Fund for Families. We're so pleased to have this group join us. They are very interested in helping nonprofit organizations that are in the areas of health services, educational services, and social services that serve children and families in the Connecticut River Valley and the shoreline areas. So we're thrilled. This will be the first time they've participated in our process, and we're happy to have them. Our Sarah A. Rosenbaum Fund for Women and Girls is a wonderful group who are very interested in helping to empower women, girls, and individuals who identify as female to be self-reliant and reach their potential. They have a broad range of programs and services that they're interested in, and they're particularly interested in programs that are serving, that are really focused on bringing girls and individuals that identify as female together to help empower them and to help them seek a stronger, more vibrant future through mentoring and education and a sense of togetherness to help address a broad range of issues that affect the bright futures for our girls and individuals who identify as female. St. Luke's Home joined us several years ago as a fund, and they serve seniors and veterans. So they're very interested to ensure that our seniors and veterans are continuing to have access to the services and programs that they need to be thriving members of the community. And our final group that participates is the Swaim Arts Enrichment Fund for the Middletown Public Schools. And those are grants that are directly in partnership and funded through the Middletown Public Schools to encourage arts enrichment for our Middletown youth. So I'm going to pause there for just a second, let everyone digest, just find out if there are any questions that popped up. Thank you, Mary. GSB, we did get a question in the chat. Who's GSB? GSB is Guilford Savings Bank. They have re-identified and remarketed themselves to their acronym, but thank you so much for asking that question. And I should have had that in parentheses just to help make that transition. So GSB is Guilford Savings Bank. And I think that that's sort of it for the moment. So now I'm going to switch. The second call for applications that is occurring during our spring process is the Janvrin Fund. The Janvrin Fund has been doing some grant making through our general grants process for several cycles now, but in the fall they launched, we've worked long and hard with that committee, and we so appreciate those volunteers. They're very interested in what's going on in our community, and we developed some guidelines and criteria for specific calls for applications that they are interested in reviewing. So the Janvrin Fund was established through a bequest from the Janvrin sisters to preserve, protect, and steward land, waterways, and wildlife habitats for the benefit of the county's ecosystem, the habitats for birds and other wildlife, and the well-being and enjoyment of our residents. The committee is very interested in programs, projects, or services that directly impact Middlesex County. They could benefit any and all 15 towns. They may touch towns outside of Middlesex County, but their focus must be Middlesex County. And they're not restricted to what many would consider solely traditional environmental organizations. They're really, you'll see on the next slide, they're encouraging some creative out-of-the-box thinking and questions about how do we utilize our natural resources to educate and ensure accessibility for all to our natural spaces, and encourage a better and stronger understanding of how to preserve, protect, and steward the land for the benefit of all, not just for today and tomorrow, but long into the future. But I do want to stress that those organizations that may be considering an application to the Janvrin Fund, please review the criteria and ensure you meet the eligibility criteria. They are seeking funding requests of up to $15,000, and they're very interested in partnerships and collaborations that could leverage the organizational dollars as well as under other funding sources and partnerships. So as I said, as well as the more traditional stewardship conservation efforts that they do consider applications for, they're also looking for some creative out-of-the-box thinking, because they know some groups are partnering on some really great original ideas. We're particularly interested in how groups and partnerships and organizations may be engaging the youth in environmental education to help develop the next generation of stewards of our environment. And definitely, as I mentioned, promoting partnerships across a wide spectrum of both constituents and cohorts. There are great, in the fall cycle, we had some very interesting partnerships come forward. And also to foster equitable conservation and stewardship. So what does that mean? We borrowed this from a fellow nonprofit organization, the Conservation Trust for North Carolina. They had really worked hard on thinking about what does equitable conservation and stewardship mean, and they have been, and their definition continues to evolve, and they send it to us every time they tweak it. But we really liked what they had sort of devised, and they gave us permission to use it, and we so appreciate that. And it's the concept that our environment, the land, the food, our water, we're all connected to it. And how do we ensure that entire communities of people who may have been excluded from direct interaction with that environment have access to it and understand the fundamental connection to our community? And these could be populations that may be more urban and not have access to as many natural environments. Maybe it's low economic. Maybe it's other abilities, those that maybe have neurodiverse abilities, or maybe some other physical ability that they have not had easy access and many opportunities to engage and understand and participate in stewarding and conserving and accessing and enjoying our environment. So it's a very broad concept, but we're really encouraging everyone that if you have some ideas about how we can connect our communities more directly, both for today, but also to continue to steward and understand for tomorrow, we're looking for those ideas. We have had some people ask for some questions. So we welcome the applications that could, for a broad range of things. It could be wildlife habitats, it could be waterways, it could be land, health, livelihood, maybe even enjoyment. As I mentioned, we're very interested in collaborative programs for the Janvrin Fund and really rooted in solution-oriented approaches. It could be an existing program or special project. It could be something new. It could be capacity building to move a whole group forward, or technical assistance to ensure accessibility, access, and consideration. I do want to stress at this time, we are not accepting land acquisition applications. If that changes in the future, we will advertise that as well as other application opportunities. But at this time, we are not accepting applications for land acquisition. So some Q&A along with this, particularly as we received in the last process. A lot of people kept saying, well, what is creative, out of the box, imaginative? So on a previous slide, we had the theme of planting the seeds for new ways of thinking. That's what we mean. We don't want to put, we tried really hard to not put some parameters on it, because you have the great ideas. And those are the great ideas that we're looking for. It may not be traditional conservation. Maybe you've got a new idea for that. Maybe a new idea for stewardship or education and connecting people. That we're being very cautious to try to give some ideas without having someone say, well, they didn't come up with that idea, so they wouldn't accept it, right? But I want to stress too, it does not mean that we won't consider the more traditional conservation, stewardship, and education programs. Those are welcome as well. So some of the ideas, right? We're seeking ways to connect all peoples of all demographics to our environment, making sure everyone has access, everyone can enjoy and understand and participate in conserving, stewarding, and benefiting our overall environment for the betterment of our communities. It could be a community garden or a pollinator pathway, a sensory garden. It could be a program in partnership with a neurodiverse population. We know from coming through the COVID pandemic how important it is for people to get out and enjoy our open spaces for their mental health and well-being. It could be story walks. We've had in the past some wonderful partnerships between land trusts and libraries to promote story walks so that families can get out and enjoy the hiking trails while having learning and educational opportunities during a story walk to help encourage our children and youth to see themselves within the environment. All right, so I'm just pausing really quickly. I think that I haven't seen any emerging questions at the moment. So I'm going to get into particulars about how you can find the application. So the application itself will go live on March 7th. On our website, when you hover over nonprofits, on the left-hand side, you will see the grants program. Those are the general guidelines for our grant making and the general criteria. And then the general funding application and the Janvrin Fund application will each have their own information page. And so select the one that you will be applying for, and on that page you will find information as well as the link to the specific application form. So let's go through some application tips. These are things that we have noticed in prior cycles, as well as some feedback from our communities. Let's talk about the budget first. So not only do we request the organization's operating budget, and that does include both estimated expenses and estimated revenue for your operations calendar or operations fiscal year, but we require a summary budget form specifically for the application you are submitting. That will be posted on our website in a Word document. You download it, complete it, save it as a PDF, and upload it to your application. So we always get this question, how detailed should we be? So we don't need a line that says 15 pencils, X dollars, and 5 reams of paper at X dollars. But we also don't want a line that just says our project. There it is. So we do want to know what the main expenses are and what you're trying to do, or how the funding will be used towards what expenses. Be clear, be concise, be detailed. You don't have to get detailed way down into the minutia, but don't bundle it into a single item. If we receive budgets that just have, and this has happened in the past, we get a budget summary form and it says education program, $15,000. So what's involved in the education program from a budget perspective? And so that is not what we're looking for. We want to know some of the details. If the community foundation is the only funder So if you are requesting $5,000 and your total program or project need cost is $5,000, that means we're the only funder. You must include an explanation. This is a requirement in this, as of this cycle. We have encouraged it in the past. We are now requiring it. You can include it in the narrative. You can include it. There's a space at the bottom of our budget summary form that you'll complete where you can put in an explanation, but you must explain why the Community Foundation is the only funder. Even your organization is not setting it, some operations money towards it. Why is the Community Foundation the only funder for your project? The budget summary does have a place where if you have other funders, or maybe you're going to use some of individual donors that make contributions towards your general operating or towards a specific program. So we do want a list of that. Now, on the individual donations, we're not looking for your individual donor names. You can just say individual donations and what your estimated expectation of a total revenue from that piece is. But if you are considering other funding other applications to funders similar to the Community Foundation, whether it's a private or public foundation, or maybe it's a corporate entity, we are interested if you'll list those individually, because we're always interested to know what other groups are potentially providing funding to organizations in our footprint. It's a good way to see how well the investment is overall. And of course, if you're collaborating, you can show in the budget form if there is funding that will be used by other organizations that are a collaborator on your program or project. As I mentioned earlier, all of our applications have 2 core narrative responses. We try to keep these as streamlined and straightforward as possible. But by having 2 narrative questions, it means that you have some leeway, right, in how you do your narrative. Be specific, be clear about what the need is and how your request for funding will support that need. And I will tell you that we have had a request from our committees to stress that you please stay on point. In the past, because we only ask 2 narrative questions, we have a slightly higher maximum character limit. Some groups have felt it necessary to use every single character available, and they go off in all these great direction, like they go off to the left for a little while, and then they go off to the right for a little while, and it's not clear how it ties in with what it is that you're trying to do and how you need funding to do it. So our committees have said, please stay on point. And if you don't need to use the whole character maximum, please don't feel that you do. It's not required for your narrative. Bullet points are appreciated. If you have big, thick paragraphs and there's a way to sort of break it out, it makes the reading easier, but don't just do an application of only bullet points, because that also doesn't necessarily provide enough information. For those that may not be familiar with our application form, it does allow you to draft your responses in another document and then copy and paste it in what's known as a rich text format, which includes bolding and underlining. So we also encourage, and I'll get to this in a minute, a little more, but we encourage you draft your narrative responses in a word processing document and then copy and paste it in the application when you're getting close to the submission point. Make sure you include in your narrative your impact. If you reference the number of people you serve, be specific about that service. How are you impacting them? How are you going to measure that? If you're offering a community outreach program, how are you going to notify and engage the community to ensure attendance at that? And what are the action items after your program? What are the takeaways? What will those people take with them and be able to continue on into the future? Acronyms are always good. However, the first time you have an acronym in your narrative, please make sure you also include the whole name or concept or whatever that the acronym refers to. Our committees are made up of volunteers from our board and the community. They come from a broad range of backgrounds and experiences, and not all acronyms are familiar to them. So the first time you use an acronym, also include what that acronym it means, so that as they read it on down in your narrative, they know what and understand what it is. Let's talk about the impact. There are demographic questions. They're check boxes on our application. We do list all 15 towns. We know some programs serve all 15 towns. But if you select all 15 towns in your demographic checkbox, but you only talk about 3 towns in your narrative, that's a disconnect. Please don't feel that you need to check every box just because it's there. The demographic questions where there are check boxes refer directly to what it is you are applying, and that those towns or those groups, because we have a lot of demographic groups listed, so that we have a better understanding of really who you are serving specifically with what it is that you are asking for funding support to do. And once again, I stress this all the time, the question of total number served is a fill in the blank for a number. These are not census numbers. Please do not use the census number for the town or the county, because our immediate response, particularly in the past, we have actually received applications that use the census number for the county as the total impact number. And the immediate question we have is, are you really going to serve every single individual directly? Are you touching them directly through your program or service? So we really, it's if the service or program or your mission serves 8 people, that's okay, because you are making a direct impact in the lives of 8 people. It's okay to talk about that. If it's 40 people, 40 people. If it's 100 people, or maybe birds, if you're doing wildlife sanctuaries or other things, it could be, deer or whatever. And then once again, please, please, please proofread, proofread, proofread. Particularly if you are mentioning costs in the application and it's the same costs that are listed on your budget summary, the total project cost and the specific request on the front page, does it match your budget summary? We see a lot of errors in here, as well as mathematical errors. We do have an FAQ, the application outline document, and instructions that are available on the website for both types of applications that are in PDF. We strongly encourage you to review all of those. We have tried to answer a lot of the questions over the years that have come up. If you have new ones, please, by all means, send them to us. We're always updating those documents, but a lot of information is there. So please make sure you look at those before you begin your submission. Applications must be completed on our website. They must be completed on the website and submitted through the website. Please do not print out the application and fill it in by hand. They must be completed on our website. We do have required documents. Those must be uploaded in a PDF format, including the budget summary form that you will download, complete, and save as a PDF. And I'm going to stress this. I get an email, at least from one organization, every time we do an application cycle that says, I can't get the document to upload to your website. So I ask them to email it to me. And sure enough, it's a JPEG, or it's a TIFF, or it's an Excel spreadsheet. The website will not accept it. It actually will not. And it's a safety precaution for the form itself, as well as for our website as a whole. So it must come in a PDF. Now, that being said, periodically, the application has also gotten cranky and not wanted to accept PDFs. Doesn't happen frequently, but it has. If that happens, don't panic. Don't fight with it. Let us know, because we can always have you send the PDF separately sometime, or check the size of the PDF. Some PDF makers, for some reason, turn PDFs into these mammoth file sizes. They're huge. Can't figure out why it does it. but that will also cause the site to not accept if even though I do have it set pretty high, it can sort of get a little cranky. But so this goes any part of the application, whether it's PDFs or anything else. If you have any difficulties, if you're running into some technical issues, please let us know, because you probably aren't the only one, and we don't know what's happening, and we will try to resolve it as quickly as we can. Our site does not provide for a print preview when the application is done. And it doesn't do that for several reasons, which are really technical. I'm not going to get into. We have tried to do it. It's not available in the form process that we use, particularly because we don't require you to create a username and password to access the form, but you will receive your final submission, including a PDF of it. If you don't receive it, please let Mary or me know, because we'll forward it to you after it comes in. Sometimes servers get slogged down and it can take a little bit of time for it to arrive, or make sure you check your quarantine or junk filters if you don't see it right away. Sometimes your filters may not like it and may put it into a quarantine or a junk. But if you don't get it, please let us know, because one, we'll make sure we received it, but two, we can forward that to you. As a reminder, there are required documents that must be submitted, and they're uploaded as part of your application. The program budget, which is our form, is available for download. Your organization's operating budget, which should include both estimated expenses and revenues for your fiscal year. A list of your board of directors with their professional affiliations. Now, what does that mean? Are they an attorney? Are they a professor? Are they a retired accountant? Are they a community advocate and volunteer? In the past, we've gotten board lists with home addresses and phone numbers. We appreciate that, but it's really not necessary. We're just very nosy, in all frankness, and we're curious to know who's on your board. We like to thank those people if we know them and run into them in the public. And it's always very interesting to see the skills that you have, that you're bringing together for your the governance of your organization. For those that are 501c3 organizations, a copy of your IRS determination letter is required. We do rerun that for all applicants to ensure that you are in good standing with the IRS and have been submitting your 990s. We do check the revocation list. If you are a 170C municipal division department, there's a letter through your finance office that just confirms your EIN number with us and states that as a municipality of the state of Connecticut, you are tax exempt, blah, 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 blah. And applications that are joint collaborations or programs that a nonprofit provides to a school must include letters of support. Really quickly, you'll get this information. It's pretty straightforward, but partnerships and collaborations, as I mentioned, require letters of support. If it's a school-based program, if you are a nonprofit organization and you are partnering with a school district or a specific school within the district to bring programming into that classroom, we do require a letter from the school district superintendent, as well as the principal of the specific school you're partnering with, that states the school's understanding of the program, what it's, how it serves and staffs the curriculum that the school is providing, and provides something over and above what it is normally budgeted for the school, because our grants must be supplemental to curriculum and school district budgets, not to replace operating budgets of the school district has in place. If it's two or more nonprofits that are partnering on a single program, regardless of who the clientele or who the audience might be, one nonprofit is the applicant, the other applicant or the other nonprofit is the collaborator, the partner. We do ask that other nonprofit to submit a letter stating that they have an understanding of the program, they are committed to the funding process, they're participating with services or staffing or funding, and is this a new or an ongoing partnership? As a reminder, incomplete applications will not be reviewed. So please make sure before you click submit, you have everything there. You've answered all the questions. Everything is complete. We will review applications against the criteria for which they're submitted. If they don't meet the criteria, we will touch base and follow up. But if they don't meet the criteria, they're not going to be reviewed within that cycle. That reminds me to go back. The Janvrin Fund, because it's got very specific criteria and has a different maximum, has a slightly different application for demographics. It has its own application form. All other funding requests, general funding requests, fund for women and girls, at-risk boys, River Valley Fund for families, whatever the field of interest or general funding, if it's outside one of those fields, general work and any of our focus areas is welcome under an application. That is on another application form. There is not a drop-down box. You don't choose either the general committee or a field of interest committee to review that. That's done through staff review internally. We make the distributions. Those questions are solely focused on what's your focus area you serve. Is it arts and culture? Is it health and human services? Is it public benefit? Is it animal welfare? Is it women and girls, at-risk boys? And then what type of request it is. But you don't select whether it's reviewed by our general grants committee, which is made up of volunteers and reviews the majority of the applications or any of our field of interest. You don't have to select that. We make those selections internally, or those just assessments and distributions. You will receive a copy of your application via email after submission. However, and we're not requiring hard copies. However, if there is an issue or difficulty or we need other information, we will reach out and we may request a copy that has a physical signature on it. Fingers crossed, we shouldn't have to do that. If you don't receive your final online submission within 3 to 4 business days, please let us know. One, it helps us check to make sure it actually came in. But two, sometimes due to internet servers outside of our server, there could be delays. We may have follow-up questions during the process, so please be sure that the individual listed as the contact person entered the correct email address, and will monitor for those questions because they do go out by email and a prompt response is appreciated. So here's the really, really, really important thing that I'm going to stress again and again and again. And we had a great recommendation because the same issue we run into for final evaluations from a grantee in our PR and evaluation workshop that we held a couple of weeks ago. Our application is an online web form. We don't require you to create a username and password to access it, but that means, and there is in the application itself, you're able to save and continue later. Because we don't require a username and password, it means that your in-process application is being saved on a temporary server. We, as staff, cannot see those applications in process. We have no access to that server. We can't go in and check it out, and we can't get you the link that the site will give you to access that application as you're working on it prior to submission. So when you're working on your application, if you choose save and continue later, you're going to get a pop-up on the screen, right? And it's going to have this blue link in it. And it's going to ask you to enter your email address so it can send you the link. In high internet service times, we have noticed there is a delay in this link being sent. So we have a couple of recommendations, and I'm going to give her a shout out because I know she won't mind me mentioning her name, but I really want to thank Lori Lodge at Mark Community Resources, who came up with a brilliant idea when working on her evaluation and her applications. She drafts her narratives in a word processing document. The first time she does save and continue later, and this screen pops up right here with this link, she copies this link and she pastes it in the Word document where she's drafting her narratives. And then she always has it. So it doesn't matter whether she accidentally deleted the email and it's gone forever, or it just gets lost in the email box fray that we all face these days, or her quarantine pulled it aside, didn't like it, and got rid of it before she could access it. Any of those things can happen. She copies the link and pastes it right in her narrative Word document she's working on, so she always has it. This link will stay, is solely attached to your application, your individual application, for 30 days. Now, the applications launch on March 7th, and the due date is April 4th. So you shouldn't have a problem with the 30-day is running out, right? But if you also have an application from a prior competitive cycle that you need to complete the final evaluation for, the same thing is applicable to evaluations. But all of these links only exist for 30 days. But once again, because inevitably, without fail, I get at least 3 emails. I forgot to copy the link and I haven't gotten the email. Can you get me the link to my application? Unfortunately, no, I can't. As much as Mary and I would love to help you out, we can't. So please make sure you copy this link before you enter your email address and click send me the link. If you have an evaluation from a past cycle, meaning any of our previous competitive cycles, and you had done interims, but you hadn't quite finished, but you're now ready. Final evaluations from previous cycles are due by April 15th. If you have one from the 2021-2022 competitive cycle, and you ran into some obstacles and hurdles, and you're still not quite finished and ready to do a final evaluation, we do ask that you submit an interim evaluation update. That's a different form. You just email me or email Mary. We're happy to send you that form. But the final grant evaluation is available on our website under the nonprofits section. If you hover over resources, you'll see a grant evaluations page. And of course, we're always working on communicating with the community, right? We love to tell stories to our donors. We love to tell stories to our partners, to our committees. So any past grants, if you have updates and stories and photos, we need those. Please send those to us. Little short videos are great. Anything along those lines that help to show your impact, we're happy to feature them in e-news, the updated reports to our donors, our community report. We use them in lots of ways. So we always appreciate those. Please send those to us. March 7th, the application will go live and is due at 4 p.m. on April 4th. I really need to stress this. 4 p.m. on April 4th, not at midnight, not at 1 a.m., April at 4 p.m., please, because the application will get taken down, but that is our cutoff time. So they must be submitted by 4 p.m. in order to be considered during the process. During April, we will distribute them to the various committees that will be participating based on the applications we receive. And CFMC staff will also do some follow-up as we prepare reports for our committees. So if you don't hear from us, don't panic. It's not a problem. Everything was great. But if we have some questions or we need some more information, we will reach out to you. Our committees review them during May and make their final recommendations for funding to the board of directors for the June meeting. And then we will notify you at the end of the month and send out funding agreement letters and then distribute funding in late July, early August. We appreciate all that you do. Truly, you all are remarkable. You give us so much information. You keep us connected to our communities. It's just incredible the amount of great things that you are doing and providing our communities, and we really, really appreciate that. We can't thank you enough. We know that you work so hard and you are so committed to Middlesex County, to our 15 towns and all of our residents, friends, and neighbors. And that means a great deal to us. We really appreciate how you keep us connected with your updates, your stories. If a new issue is on the rise and you send us just a, hey, heads up, didn't know if you knew about this. And within the PowerPoint, you do have our contact information. Mary and I are here to help in any way that we can. We also want to remind you, if you don't follow, if your organization doesn't follow us on our social media, please do. We are going back through and trying to follow everyone that we are networked and connected with. And also, most of you, I think, got this through an e-blast. But if you got it only directly through an email from me or from Mary, please make sure that you get in touch with us. We want to make sure that you're on our email list as well. All right, so I'm going to, I'm going to stop sharing this and I'm going to see questions. It's a lot of information in a very short window of time. Okay, so now I'm going to say, Mary, Cynthia, what did I forget?
Not a darn thing there. I think you covered it, but I will just say Thayer really means it when she says, please share it with us what you're doing. We love to brag. We love to tell the community about what you're doing in the community to make it even better. So please blast away and tell us what you are up to.
Holly, I see your hand up. Where are
Yes,
you?
I'm over here. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I have a question. So we are a statewide organization. We're based in Middletown, and we do a lot of advocacy within Middletown and the close areas within the, 19 towns or
15? Yeah.
15, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So we don't always know which towns we're going to have people come to our events or webinars or things like that until after we take the surveys. We can say that we do have people in a lot of the areas that come usually to our meetings and things like that, but we're not 100% certain exactly when they'll be coming or if they'll be coming. So that's a question. So would I check those that they do come to our meetings if they're from Middlebury, a couple of those different areas? I can't think off the top of my head. And what if they don't come to the trainings or what we're trying to apply for? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Or should we not include them?
So that's a really good question. And thank you, because we recognize that some programs have a wider audience that you're advertising to. So along with that, the first answer is, if it's a community outreach program, you may be statewide and you may do a wide thing, but one of the questions that the committee is going to ask, are you making a concerted effort to reach out specifically to any one or multiple towns in our footprint? So is one of your goals to raise participation in our footprint? That being said, the nice thing about our application and then our final evaluation is on the application side, we know you're guessing, you're hoping, you're estimating. So while you might want to reach everybody in all 15 towns, if you know from past experience that you really have more success in 8 of them, do the 8, but then in your narrative, you can say, we've checked off the 8 towns in the past we've had participants, but our goal is to try to increase or have new attendance from these other towns in your footprint, right? Because we recognize that you don't necessarily know. And then at the time of your final evaluation, as you know, from past surveys, it's an opportunity to say, here's what we tried and here's what we know happened. Okay. Yep. Okay. I think, Meg, I saw a minute ago your hand was up, but it came down. Did you have a question?
Yeah.
There you are. Okay.
Thanks. So if I have a $5,000 project in mind, in the budget, should I also list out general operations expenses in order for the project to happen? That way, because Community Foundation, in a way, would be the only funder for the project. However, there's additional administrative fees for the project to happen. Should I list general expenses as well?
Yes, and that's a good question. So let me reiterate this. So as the community foundation is a firm believer that in order to do programs and services, you have, it takes some general, it's part of your general operating to further your mission. So our expectation is that if you choose to apply for a specific program or project that you're doing, that you want to attach community foundation funding to, right? Part of that, you have to have a staff person do it, right? Or you have to have materials that may be a slightly larger audience, but are used there. So any of those should be included in your budget of that, because that's the overall budget to do that program. It's not just the notebooks you need for the program, or the snacks you need for the program, or the flyers you need for the program, but it's the person to do the program. That's all part of the overall budget. If you are seeking broader general support for your work in the community, you must not only show that in the budget, obviously in your operating expenses, but in your narrative. You must make that connection. How does community foundation support of your general operating to further your mission impact the community? Tie it in. Because the community foundation supports us this way, we're able to do this program and that project or do this service. So it's that all has to be tied in your narrative. Okay. All right. We have anything, who else? Any other questions? Okay. We said it at the top. I'm going to remind you here. You're going to leave the webinar, and about this afternoon or tomorrow morning, you're going to be talking about this with somebody, and they're going to say, well, what about XYZ? Or did you ask this? And you're going to say, wish I'd asked that. Send us an email, give us a call. Please, we like that because we know what happens. It's a lot to digest. It's a lot to think about. It's a lot to go through, and we know questions arise afterwards. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us.
I have another question.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
So we're a little strange in the fact that we have a fiduciary, but we have a coordinating council, and we don't have a board of directors here with KTP.
So Holly, that's not a strange question. And I'm so glad you asked that, because it was the one thing I did forget to put in a slide, which Mary, don't let me forget. We do have to mention this in some respects. So we know that some organizations have a fiduciary agent because you're a coalition, you are a collaborative group, but there is a nonprofit organization that actually manages your grant funding for you. So you need to do two things. The very first thing is you need to send us an email, because there is a specific fiduciary form. It's a 2-page form. Your fiduciary is required to complete and submit, stating that they are aware that you are submitting a grant and they are willing to take on the fiduciary oversight of the use of the grant funding, and will follow up with any required paperwork that we may require of them. For the board of directors, you're going to submit your governing council, but we do want the fiduciary, and the fiduciary will be asked to include their board of directors so that we have it on file.
Thayer, I was wondering, when picking out the project focus, if you have some of the specific funding available, if our projects can be related to a variety of the focus projects, should we pick one that has a specific funding opportunity?
So that's a good question. And let me, I'm going to pop back here really quick, because that is a good question. And it's can be a little confusing, and I don't want it to be. So when you're asking questions or answering questions, one of the drop downs, there are 2 drop down questions. One is going to ask you this question: what is the primary type of funding, what is your primary goal of your application? Is it supporting the mission? Is it technology? Is it training? Is it program or capacity building? The second drop down is going to ask you to select this, not this last one, but it's going to ask you to select one of these. You may, and we recognize the world is not siloed, right? So you may do community enrichment and education through your programming. But is it more arts and culture, or is it more education? You can only choose one. So you pick the one that is the primary. You can speak to multiple in your narrative, but you're going to pick the primary sort of overall focus area. Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
And it's a good question. Thank you. Because that got a little complicated. I apologize. So once again, if you think of something when you come off, don't hesitate to send us an email, pick up the phone. We're happy to answer questions. Thank you all for being here. It was great seeing everybody. And we look forward to a really great process.